All right, good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for coming out this morning. We are very excited about this new initiative, Neighborhood NYC. For those who don't know, my name is Melva Miller, and I'm the Deputy Borough President representing this great borough and our great Borough President, Melinda Katz. So again, thank you for coming out and welcome to Borough Hall. All right. So the Borough President is going to stop by a little later, but she didn't want to hold up the seminar this morning. You know, as our borough grows and everyone wants to come to Queens to invest and start a business and live here, Queens is the it borough now, keeping connected is more important than ever. And as we know, technology is the key in this age of how we do that. So being able to celebrate our different neighborhoods and the uniqueness of our neighborhoods is extremely important. And that's why we're excited about Neighborhoods NYC. So to explain and give a description of the initiative this morning, we have Margie Weinstein from the mayor's office, and she's going to give a presentation and answer all of your questions about how to stay connected not only to each other, but also to the great initiatives that's going on throughout the city, throughout citywide. So without further ado, Margie.
Great, so welcome. I'm really pleased that everyone was able to come out this morning, and thank you so much for your interest in Neighborhoods.nyc and your engagement with it. As Melva mentioned, I'm with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation. Also wanted to just let you know that the CTO, Minerva Tantoko, says hello, sends her regards, and best wishes to the Queens group, many of whom she knows out here. The kind of order of the presentation is I'll go through a little bit of background, kind of an overview of the site. We'll take a look at the live site and see how it works as well as the application process. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So maybe write down some of your questions, keep them in the back of your mind, and then at the end, we can go through the Q&A. So as some of you might know, the city launched .nyc, a new top-level domain last year, and as part of that launch, it reserved several thousand names for city-affiliated purposes, and among those, 400 neighborhood names in all the 5 boroughs. So the city has this group of 400 neighborhood names that are available for community groups to license. And it's really a kind of unique and wonderful opportunity that is specific to New York City. So this is the first and only city right now that has a coordinated group of neighborhood domains with specific city-affiliated data. And so obviously in various other cities, there are tenant associations or neighborhood groups that have websites for their neighborhoods, but this is a really unique opportunity for you to actually license the domain. So Astoria.nyc, Jackson Heights.nyc, Long Island City.nyc. And then it's a chance for you to really kind of own the neighborhood, be the ambassador for the neighborhood that you represent and the community that you serve. And it's also a really great chance to kind of tap into the city and be a part of history too. What the site actually does is pull the most requested and most utilized feeds from the city's open data portal. So we have 311 service requests, there are MTA updates, sanitation, health, transportation. And what I can do is actually pull up the live site so we can walk through it and you can see. All right, so someone give me a neighborhood that you represent.
Richmond Hill.
Okay. All right. So here you see the Richmond Hill site. And what the city has done for Neighborhoods.nyc is have a standard image for every borough. So you're seeing the 7 train, whether or not the 7 train runs to Richmond Hill. So I know we've had some questions about that. So Neighborhoods.nyc itself is a beta site. meaning that it is a template of what is available. And the beta site launched on October 14th, and the beta period is open for 90 days. And as you're seeing what we did here, you go to neighborhoods.nyc and type in the name of your neighborhood. The end of this beta phase, the 90-day beta phase, the specific neighborhood names will roll out. So richmondhills.nyc, Astoria.nyc. And during this window, this is when you can apply to license your neighborhood domain. So this is the window now when your organization can become this site and take administrative rights of this site. So what you'll get are the updates on, it's a quick dashboard of weather, recycling, schools, alternate side parking, an MTA feed, and for neighborhoods that are affected by the Long Island Railroad, the Long Island Railroad will start to become integrated into the MTA feed. You also have a news feed here that shows you, here are the feeds. So let's say you wanted to go to public health. You see the public health with sanitation and 311 requests that have come into the neighborhood from the open data portal. So it's specifically targeted for your neighborhood and gives you a snapshot of what's happening here and now in your specific location. As a web administrator, you can also build out the site. So this is the template. You can add an additional page and put on information that represents your community. You can put a listing of local businesses. You can put a listing of local shops. You could put medical services. You can also, the other unique feature of this site is that if you have a website or a platform for your tenant association or community organization, you can embed these modules on your own site. And then the domain that you have is the name of your neighborhood. And I can show you a little bit about how the embed process would work. I can also take you through the application itself. Okay, so this is the application itself. Just asking for information about your organization and mission statement, your capacity to run the site, your vision for the site. And really the idea is that these sites should represent the needs and interests of your community. You can put the content on there that represents the neighborhood that you serve. What you will be getting in the licensing agreement is the domain itself, so jacksonheights.nyc, and the capacity to pull these feeds as well as use the template should you want it. And I know there are various questions about how multiple entities from a neighborhood can come together. And one of the questions that the application asks is how you're collaborating with other entities in your neighborhood. And so our hope and our aim is that community organizations will work together and collaborate with each other to all apply for either Ridgewood or Jackson Heights. And then you can put the application together in the way that maybe one is a tenants organization and can serve residents, and one is a commercial organization and can serve business interests, and together provide a site that has the richest, most robust content. And the full list of neighborhood names is here. These are names that came from Department of City Planning data. I know there have also been a lot of questions about how the neighborhood names were selected. And these were names that are from the city database and then augmented by various neighborhood names that the city has services in. And the list came out in about 2012. So I know there are some new neighborhoods that might have been created since that time that might not appear on this list, but what you can do is if there's a neighborhood that you're bordering or that overlaps, chances are there's a name that encompasses that area, and so it might be subdivided in ways that as a resident you think of yourself as one part, as one neighborhood, and if you don't see that neighborhood here, you could try either surrounding neighborhoods or we could help figure out which geographic area you're in. Here's a quick video that walks through the various features of the site.
Neighborhoods NYC, coming fall 2015. Check it out.
It's a private-public partnership with the City of New York. Neighborhoods.nyc is the new online platform that community groups can use to develop online hubs for civic engagement, online organizing, and information sharing. Neighborhoods.nyc is designed to be user-friendly on mobile or desktop. And best of all, local community groups can license these domains. Let's take a look at Neighborhoods.nyc. The concept is simple. Enter the name of any neighborhood in New York City. And this is custom for every single neighborhood in all 5 boroughs. Immediately, you see what you need to know in your neighborhood. Using live data from the MTA, we'll let you know what's on schedule. We'll let you know about trash pickup, whether school's in session, and street parking regulations. Let's get down into detail. Here's what's going on in Astoria, and it's easy to share. Upcoming events like farmers markets and street fairs. But New Yorkers want more, and they need to know other information. Our Lookup Tools put them all in one place, from schools to polling places, green markets, and more. New Yorkers care about their city. That's why we made it easy to put in your 311 service request. And we want to hear from you on how to continue to improve our site. Every neighborhood can be a part of Neighborhoods.nyc. Your community group can license your domain. Neighborhoods.nyc, because every neighborhood is what makes New York City the place to be.
Okay, so thank you. So as you saw from the video, this also has lookup tools for each neighborhood. So you can look up your local polling place, your schools, public officials, green markets, sort of all of the things here. And these are lookup tools as well that as administrators of the site, you'll have the capacity for your neighborhood to embed these on your site. So there are the two options as being a community group who can license the domain. You can either license the template and build it out with custom content, or you can embed these modules on your own site, a new site that is, jacksonheights.nyc or astoria.nyc. As I mentioned, we're now in this beta phase where we rolled out the site as a template of what's possible. That ends on January 12th. So we're encouraging you to apply to be the administrator of your neighborhood domain before January 12th. Those applications are submitted to the city, and then around probably end of January at that point, you'll be notified if you are the administrator of your neighborhood's domain and enter into a licensing agreement with the city, at which point you then can register the domain for your neighborhood and build out the site as your organization. And this is, as I mentioned, it's really a kind of a unique, wonderful way to represent your community, to have your neighbors, your community organizations have an online presence. These are also really valuable domains. So for folks who are familiar with the online world, having something like Astoria.nyc or JacksonHeights.nyc also increases your search engine optimization and ways in which the public will find your services, your businesses your information. And so it's a really unique part of being the city, and a unique way of kind of showcasing where you live and what you offer as a community. I'm happy to also answer. I know there are a lot of folks came in with questions, so I'm also happy to answer questions and can walk through either other parts of the site or the application itself specifically. There are 94 Queens neighborhoods that are in the list of 400, and those are all available for license.
So what's the last thing?
There are 94 Queens neighborhoods.
94 Queens, I see.
Because out of the 400, so it's spread among the 5 boroughs. Yeah. Yeah.
In addition to a neighborhood site, can a nonprofit organization that serves the community get one of these sites?
Yeah, the application is for nonprofit organizations, exactly. So one of the questions on the application is for organizations to upload their 990 form. And so it's meant for nonprofits. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a series of questions.
Yep.
The elected officials, their district maps included in that?
Their district maps are not included in that.
Now, how do we get that included? Do we go through the public partnership, your organization, or?
You're interested in actually having a visual map associated with the elected official on
That's exactly right.
So let's go to the elected official lookup tool, and I'll show you what it looks like. Public officials.
Yeah,
So,
I want more than that. So who would put in the district maps? That's
so
my
actually,
question.
we have someone here from Visalytics who built out. We mentioned in the video, it's a public-private partnership. So Visalytics is a local startup that built the template, and so that would be something we could work with them in terms of building out maps. And it's also something that, as the administrator of the site, you could also customize the site in the way that your neighborhood wanted. You could yourself embed the map.
Okay. I assume the neighborhood is created by zip code reference?
No, actually, not by zip code. So by Department of City Planning data, and then augmented. They used a third-party mapping system called Pedia Cities, which is open source and pulls from DCP data, but the boundaries are actually a little bit more generous than DCP boundaries. And the reason for that is that it's meant to be a snapshot of your area, and so it gives you a wider snapshot of what's happening in your area. So for example, when the Second Avenue subway...
That's okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if I look at Jackson Heights, for instance, it probably goes over to Astoria Boulevard or LaGuardia, and it doesn't stop at Northern Boulevard, which would be the zip code. So am I correct in that assumption? Okay,
that is probably a little more
So I'll just
generous.
look at the map, that's fine.
Yeah.
Who adjudicates a concern that between the public and private, we're the gatekeepers, let's assume, right? And a terrorist organization comes to us and say, I'd like a listing on, who adjudicates that? Who says yes or no?
So when you file the application for the neighborhood name?
After you are an administrator,
Right.
Exactly. If somebody wants to, or an organization puts on something inappropriate.
Oh, yeah, so the licensing agreement is with the law department and Do It, and there are, within the licensing agreement, there are terms and conditions that the neighborhood organizations agree to adhere to with oversight from the law department. So things, inflammatory material, illegal material, it stipulates that only 10% of any given page can be dedicated to advertising, no alcohol or tobacco products. So it's a licensing agreement with terms that the entity agrees to adhere to. And
Okay,
then
my final question is there a list of responsibilities that we would assume
Yes.
if we are the gatekeeper?
that's correct.
And they're visible now?
A handout right there, the required modules and feeds. So if you are the administrator of the site, the list of required modules and feeds are things that you agree to include on your site, and then you could obviously embellish it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't understand this. I work for community board 1
Yeah.
My name is Florence. These are things that, one, Village should have been implementing into our sites and giving away all the neighborhoods. How much is it going to be per domain name? Because these should be city-run and city-owned domains, not given out to the public.
So the domains are free, yeah, for the organization that licenses them, the domain is free, and then the cost to them is just registering their domain,
And
which
how much is that?
it's about $20 or $30 depending on the registrar that they
if you're a
use.
board and you want to buy all the groups in your area,
So for
it's $20 per group. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 neighborhoods.
So for community boards, actually the thing that we're doing for community boards are the feeds that you see, the open data feeds. Here, let me go back over here. Those you can embed on the community board sites, and rather than, you wouldn't have to necessarily.
It's watering down with the community boards too. People are not going to need to come to our sites. They're going to all these other sites. We already had a problem in our district. We had somebody put up a fake website
For the community board.
For the community board. And this is just going to be another avenue where people are going to go the wrong way when they're looking for specific help. I don't understand it. I really don't. Because why are you breaking up? I mean, in the first place, there are 14 boards in the area, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is now you're slicing the boards into even smaller pieces. People can go in other directions, and what we do is going to be less valuable.
So we're actually working with community boards to try and make the feeds available to the community boards for exactly that reason. So folks can still come to your site for the information.
Like we're the last link. We should have been the first. I mean, I have been personally hands-on doing our website. It is a nightmare. I send them something, they make a mistake, I send it back. They make another mistake, I send it back again to get it right. I have board members who are on top of our website and they're looking at what's going on. So what's going to happen is, why are we the last ones? We're city agencies. Why are we the last ones? Why aren't we having this first? I mean, I have most of this stuff put on my website because I took the time to do it. But this is mind-boggling. I mean, we're being all the boards throughout the city are being overlooked by this process. This is not fair. This is very inappropriate.
We're happy to work with the community boards. I mean, we're already starting to have conversations with so you liaison with, is it the Community Affairs Unit or?
CAU, but we don't go through CAU with our website. We go directly through Do It.
Yeah.
And they're coming hands-off also. There's less communication. They want you to email them, to email it to this, to email it to that. And then when they make the mistake, you have to wait for the email. They won't even pick up a phone. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think Florence brings up some great concerns. Maybe we'll have to set up a separate time to
for
bring in the
community
mayor's
boards,
office, and maybe at the borough cabinet or another time to bring all the community boards together.
This is like, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I don't know how to verbalize. I'm so upset. I don't know how to verbalize what I want to say. But you're taking the boards and you're slicing them up.
So the neighborhoods, my understanding is that the neighborhoods designations, these are designations that always existed under the Department of City Planning alongside the community board
We're talking about
boundaries.
technology now, people looking for information.
Yeah, so we can work with the community boards because the intent was that these feeds would be available for groups as well as community boards. That so we've actually started the community board conversation. So we want them to be available for you as well. And we can set up a separate meeting.
Yeah, we'll set
Yeah. Yeah.
If I already have a website established, and you said that I should be able to embed the feeds inside of my existing,
Right.
so I still have to get licensed first in order to be able to do that, correct?
Well, the feeds themselves, we're working on making those available, making them an open embed, but what you would be licensing is which neighborhood are you in?
Well, I'm looking at Sutton Boulevard bid, for example.
Okay.
Which is a subset of Jamaica.
Okay, so what you would actually be licensing is like Jamaica.nyc. That's what you would be getting from the city, is that specific URL. And so then folks looking for information about Jamaica It would pull
So
up
I would
Jamaica.nyc.
need then to collaborate with all the other organizations, the Jamaica bid, there's a 165th Street bid, all of them are also part of that Jamaica neighborhood. So we would then have to work together and license together Jamaica, or
You can-
one would do that and kind of
One
make it
could
available to
apply, yeah. What we've also discovered is not every organization in every neighborhood is actually interested in maintaining the site. So even though that there are numerous agencies or organizations in Jamaica, not everyone might actually have an interest in maintaining a website. So it is possible that one organization or entity could apply and oversee it for Jamaica. And then one of the questions on the application is, how do you aim to serve your community? So the idea being that if you are the one organization that applies, it's a site that represents the needs of the entire community.
And what kind of time frame in terms of man hours are you talking about to actually maintain?
That depends on you. I mean, some people are already talking about video, audio, multimedia. I assume other organizations have maybe smaller capacity and they'll just build out, a list of local resources. So that really depends on what you want your site to look like. And that's, in some ways, the beauty of the individual domains is that they look and feel like the neighborhoods that they represent. So if you want to have an audio podcast walking tour of Jamaica, you could do that. If that's more bandwidth than your staff can do, then you just have a listing of local businesses. So it's custom.
And do you have an example or something that people can look at to reference to see what are some of the capabilities that you're recommending? Or how do you best utilize all of these resources?
All these sites,
Do you have an
So
example?
we're putting together now a list of possibilities, sort of best practices for websites and for organizations that are interested in licensing domains but might not have some of the technical know-how. In February, once the domains have been issued, we are also having a series of educational seminars on how to build out a website. In some ways, it's almost like your creativity is the limit. I'm sure you've seen really beautiful websites and then other websites that are slimmer. And a lot of it actually depends on the platform that you choose. So you can either build out this template, which is a lot more bare bones, or you could go with Squarespace or WordPress or Wix or something that has a lot more capacity.
Thank you.
A follow-up, I think, sort of toward that last question. If, as a community organization, we wanted to have our own site, we could have like Briarwood Community Association.nyc, not licensed through the neighborhoods.
That's right.
Right. Could we still embed, some of the tools on our site?
That's what we're working on right now, yes. So eventually the answer will be yes. You can still embed those modules on your site, but you wouldn't, as you're saying, that is correct, you wouldn't have briarwood.nyc. Yeah. Yeah.
My question is in the same vein. If you looked at, first of all, Queens of all boroughs, people identify by neighborhood. 50 years ago, nobody lived in Queens. Most people don't say they live in Queens, they live in a neighborhood. And our mailing address is a neighborhood with a zip code. Get the zip code right, that's what's important. We forget the name of the neighborhood. I worked for the city for 23 years in the Department of Finance. We had our own set of neighborhoods. We didn't like the Department of City Planning's neighborhoods because they didn't suit our purposes. Our boundaries were different for what we had to do. The Department of Health has its own neighborhoods.
Yeah.
The post office has its own neighborhoods, those are called the zip codes. The fund for the city of New York doesn't even have bounded neighborhoods. It has central points of neighborhoods, recognizing that neighborhoods overlap. There are lots and lots of neighborhoods that people use, names, that don't appear on that list. For example, Old Astoria or Ravenswood, Bay Terrace, whatever. People are continually, neighborhoods change over time.
Yeah.
100 years ago, there was no SOO, there was no Alphabet City, real estate people and stuff, So this has got to be fluid and flexible. people have got to be able to add not just new organizations with NYC, but new neighborhood names that have different boundaries.
So the
And
one,
you have the facility to do that.
yeah. The one slight catch, Yoni and I have been talking about adding additional names. So .nyc launched into the open market last October, and these were the names that the city held in reserve. And once it launched into the open market, folks had the possibility of purchasing those names. So some of those names have already been purchased because they're already on the open market, and we're not able to pull them back. But that also means that your organization can equally buy a neighborhood name on the open market that the city hasn't reserved.
And a new one that's not on your list.
Or a new one that's not on the list. Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Question. I was curious about the licensing agreement because is it available, the details of it? Because I'd hate to start, put a considerable community effort into it and then find out that our speech was restricted in some case by the licensing agreement. For example, that we may think that that's a terrorist organization, whereas they think they're a religious organization.
Okay.
So how's the city going to restrict the rights of people to speak through what are now apparently government properties?
I can send you the terms and the licensing terms if that's helpful for you. Because it's affiliated with the city, it's it's a standard contract that the law department uses for things like, subway ads or bus shelter ads. So the same kinds of terms and conditions for that content.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, and similar to your neighbor there, if for some reason licensing a specific city domain is possibly too restrictive, there is always the possibility of buying the names on the open market as well that are like briarwoodcommunity.nyc.
Right.
Yeah.
And that gets to a second question is that, if you're going to do this, it's going to take a considerable effort. I mean, if we're going to organize, for example, Jackson Heights, the dozens of different neighborhood organizations and hundreds of people who are interested in the way the neighborhood works, we're going to have to do something really special. Just another website. There's 100 million of them at this point. One more website doesn't do any good. I think the advantage of JacksonHeights.nyc was that it was the official site.
Right.
And obviously, I can create a neighborhood called a better Jackson Heights.nyc. So the good thing about reserving the names was that the city was going to put an effort behind it. The city was going to make them something special. And the city hasn't done that at all, in the sense that the city doesn't even use .nyc itself. How are you going to convince the public that this is something, that there's something special about it when the city's not even using .nyc? And where do we, where are the resources behind it? These take, as I said, it takes a lot of effort. And what happens, some neighborhoods can maybe be able to do these things on their own. Like Jackson Heights, we have a lot of retail places. Other neighborhoods don't have that retail, and they're going to need support. Where does that support come from for those neighborhoods that don't have
entity? Yeah, so the sites where no one steps up to license them, the template that you saw, the Neighborhoods.nyc template, those will roll out for those specific neighborhoods. So you're still getting the 311 feed for your neighborhood, the sanitation, the transportation. Those feeds are still appearing for the neighborhoods that don't have entities, but the beauty of the site is that it is automated and sustainable. So it can run by itself actually because it's pulling the data from the open data portal and updates automatically. So if there are 50 licenses across the 5 boroughs, that's still 350 sites that don't have an administrator. Those 350 sites run automatically from the open data feed. And so those residents still get that information. I'm also happy to talk about .nyc versus .gov. The reason that the government stayed with .gov was that so folks who went to those sites would know that it's official government information, because there are a lot of private entities that are using .nyc, some of which, to your point about content on the site, some of which are legitimate or, city endorsed or not. Someone could use it for gambling, for anything. And so that the city made a concerted effort to stay with .gov, so folks know that the information that a site that they get from a .gov site is official, whereas information they get from a .nyc site is public-private.
But shouldn't you have the same type of assurance? Shouldn't the city be working to make sure that .nyc sites, that people have the same confidence in those neighborhood sites?
So for the neighborhood sites, that's the role of the licensing agreement. So with the terms and conditions that administrators sign on for, those are the list of terms and conditions. So there is the same confidence that they would have the same kinds of rules and oversight.
And education for the community in terms of how to use this. Can the city provide education? And
yeah,
training?
those are as I had mentioned to him, the seminars that we'll have in February for folks who are interested in licensing a domain but might not know how to build out a site.
And in those neighborhoods that people aren't showing up, will you reach out to them and try and?
Yeah, so that's.
I mean, we have 35 people here today from a borough of 2 or 3 million. How are we going to reach those? So we have 94 neighborhoods.
94 neighborhoods, yeah.
And I know 1-2 people from Jackson Heights, so we have less than 35 neighborhoods.
So we can talk about outreach. I mean, although there are only 35 people here, but we did do outreach to all the community boards, the civic associations. But if there are suggestions on how we can better reach other community organizations and other communities, please, let us know.
And the other thing that I've encountered is not every neighborhood has an entity that's interested in licensing the domain. Yeah, some of them are very, like in Staten Island, some of them are very residential, and part of the agreement is that it is an organization, a nonprofit, rather than an individual. So in very residential neighborhoods, there isn't always a nonprofit organization to step forward to oversee the site, which is the beauty of the automated template, that those folks still get the information even if there isn't a nonprofit organization that is interested or able to oversee it.
Margie, if I may.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So we have a lot of questions, and we want to make sure that we get to everyone who has questions. So if you ask a question, if you have maybe follow-up questions, maybe 2 follow-up questions max, and then at the end, Margie will be here. She's not going anywhere. If there's still time allowed, then you can either ask in front of the full group or you can pull it to the side at the end. But I want to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to ask a question. That's okay.
Yeah.
For small not-for-profit, as I'm sure many are, that might not have a dedicated IT person on staff or on retainer. How would the tech talent pipeline play into the ability to utilize some of what you're discussing?
So I'm not sure that we're necessarily tapping into the tech talent pipeline, the students, but what we can do is Visalytics, the organization that's here, the company that's here, can also offer some support. And then probably the easiest way for organizations that might have minimal tech staff is to use the template that's provided and then just build out the 1 or 2 additional pages, and we can help you with that. So that would be something that, after you've been licensed to the domain in February when we had the educational seminars, we could actually walk through quite literally how to build out those pages.
Yeah. So just one quick follow-up then to follow, well, I'll let you go ahead and then have
I just wanted to reiterate that we made the administrative dashboard on the back end super simple so that organizations that don't have tech know-how, you don't have to be like a web expert. You can just go in there, select which modules you want, maybe write like a paragraph, and you're done. That's the minimal effort needed.
Okay, but for things, if you wanted to go beyond, I guess the dashboard module, maybe you can talk about what the tech talent pipeline is. I'm unfamiliar with it. It sounds great, but I'm unfamiliar with that and want to see if that's something that we might be able to tap into, whether it's directly for this or for other tech.
So the tech talent pipeline is a program that connects with schools and universities, and now I know there's a partnership with CUNY that is essentially workforce training that helps get folks into tech sphere, startup world, and gives them tools and knowledge about the tech world, so that it's training a group of people who weren't necessarily already coding, when they were 7, or the kind of had tech on their radar. So it's a way of broadening the tech workforce, diversifying and creating a pool of people who might also be competitive for startups that might not have had the resources prior to that. Yeah.
In relying on an organization to sort of maintain these sites, how are you ensuring that these sites are actually representing the needs of the community and not just additional mouthpiece for whatever organizations?
Yeah, so that's also so the city is the one who will be, the law department will be overseeing, the sites themselves and checking on the content, but in the licensing agreement itself, in a lot of the terms and conditions are things that stipulate that it's in fact not, partisan, religious, putting forth a particular ideology, but that represents the neighborhood at large. And one of the questions on the application also is, how does your organization represent the diversity of the neighborhood that you serve? And if an organization applies that doesn't necessarily serve the interests of the neighborhood, but is maybe one particular executive director's vision or position, then that organization might not get the license for the domain.
Or also I think there might be a mechanism if there are improprieties to recourse, where
Right.
if someone is stepping out about
if they're in
other
breach of
community groups
contract,
notice it.
right. If any organization is in breach of contract, then the city can retract the domain at any time. Yeah.
Yeah, but what happens when they do step out of line is the freedom of speech comes into play. For example, with our fake website, the city law department went in, they never forced them to take it down because they had the right, as long as they wrote, it is a parody, they were able to keep, the site is still up. And they get very personal. And it's representing our neighborhoods.
Yeah. So when someone signs the agreement, they're agreeing to the terms. And some of those terms are a restriction of, partisan material, illegal material. So they're agreeing
But if the
to.
material isn't illegal, that's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
I can say thank you to you, and you can say, oh, she's such a nice woman, or I can say thank you to you, you can say she's a sarcastic so-and-so. It's all in perception. That's a big problem with the internet and texting and fax and emailing and all of this. It's all in perception. And I may make a political donation to Melinda Katz, and it's free. Everybody in this country can make a political donation, but posting it and stating it in a certain way sounds very inappropriate. These sites are specific to communities, and depending on how the stuff is put on it, it can have a very detrimental or positive effect on the communities. But I don't think that this should be taken away from the offices that we have set up right now. I say I work for community board. I think that this is very disturbing. I think that, as this gentleman said about Briarwood, if you have Briarwood, ABC, volunteergroup.com or .nyc, or if you have Douglaston NYC or Astoria NYC with the specific group name in it. We have this gentleman here, Old Astoria. What's the formal name of your organization?
Old Astoria Neighborhood Association.
Old Astoria Neighborhood Association .nyc. That's completely different than saying Old Astoria NYC. It's too broad. It's far too broad.
Yeah, we can, because I think what I would actually love to do is hear the community board concerns. Maybe we can set up a separate meeting for community boards. Yeah.
It keeps coming back to the same thing though, because I hear these things, and I've already been down this path, where when the legal department got involved, there's certain ways of them getting around.
So Florence, we were actually just trying to see if we can get it on next week's Borough Cabinet, but next week's Borough Cabinet is packed. So if the DMs are agreeable in the chairs, we'll set up a separate meeting before the deadline.
Yeah.
So interested community boards can actually apply for it. And what you're talking about, I think, is a much larger domain name issue.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, that could, you could have a .com and still have that issue. And I think that that's a much broader conversation. But I hear your concerns, and I think a lot of the community boards are going to have similar concerns. So we can flesh it out.
With this, I think off the top of my head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we have 8 8 different neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more, in our district. So I go right by, it's gonna be $20 a pop for the co-pay or whatever it is for each of them, and then the board is going to own them and maintain them.
So
and then we allow all the civics and whoever wants to put their information on and do a group thing through them.
So we can talk about, right, we can talk about that because I don't think the city has actually registered all of the specific neighborhoods in your district, right? So we can see which ones they have, which ones they don't have, and then we can come up with a strategy for Astoria. But I think, this is a conversation.
Yeah, because one of the things that we're also interested in doing is working with the community boards directly too, so you can get the information that you need without having to license all of the specific neighborhoods in your community board.
All right,
I hear you.
Yeah. So for Old Astoria neighborhood.
Yeah, I guess we're just building our website now. We're a new 501c3, so looking at this initially, my initial thought was, hey, this can be a button that we can embed in there, and this can give us all the current information. And it's just simple as that. This is all I was really looking for when I came down here. So if you just clarify all that, that's something that can be done, you were saying, but you said that you're working on the parameters of that. Is that correct? You haven't established the parameters of just being able to embed it within the website you're doing. So what are your issues right now that you're debating?
Oh no, so the feeds could be embedded on another site. What we're working on now is making it an open embed in the way that YouTube is, so you can embed anyone can embed a YouTube clip on a site. Right. So making that an open embed, so folks in the neighborhood could have their updated. So I don't necessarily have to be an administrator to do that. So that's what we're working on now. So you wouldn't necessarily have to be an administrator to embed the module. As an administrator, what you would be getting is the domain oldastoria.nyc, which is there is no Old Astoria. Actually, that is on the list of names.
Is it really?
Old Astoria, yes it is. Old Astoria is on the list of names, yep. So you would be the administrator for that domain, and then you would have the official site for oldastoria.nyc. But if you decided not to license it, we are working on making that an open embed, so you could at least still get the open data feeds.
Okay, what about also the situation where our organization encompasses both Long Island City and Astoria, in terms of
right, so that I think if you had your neighborhood website, you could pull the feeds from different neighborhoods into your organization website, right? You can pull the Astoria and the Long Island City feeds through the open embed into your community website, and then you can have your community information, which isn't governed by the agreement with the city.
Okay. Now, the last thing is if one organization decides to be the administrator, so would they be gatekeepers as to what the other organizations that can come in and be part of it? Is that what
I mean, that would probably depend on the organization, but what the application encourages is collaboration among them, and if someone is actually closing out other organizations, then in that way they're not actually representing the needs and interests of the community.
And so the city would be able to retract that?
If they were in breach of contract, yeah. Yes, did you have a question? Yes,
if you have a neighborhood where you might have 2 or 3 very active groups, which one would get the gov? Let's say the 3 of them want to be the administrators. How do you resolve that?
And if the 3 of them are interested
my neighborhood's pretty active, Douglaston, and there are different groups that are very involved with the neighborhood. And I can anticipate that they don't always work together. And I can anticipate there might be a little bit of a rivalry about which one is going to get the gov. How would we work on that?
So the first step is they'd actually all have to submit applications, and if they submitted separate applications, we would reach out to those two organizations to actually see if they might be able to pool together. And if they absolutely could not, at that point, we would actually...
So someone from your group would be...
would actually look at the application to see, but the strong impulse is for the organizations to actually work together.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I mean, so the site launched, I can also say the site launched October 14th. We're now in December 1st. I have yet to receive duplicate applications for any neighborhood. So it's a concern that often comes up as a concern, but a month and a half into the application process, I have actually yet to receive duplicate applications for a neighborhood. So I think to your point about man hours for sustaining a website, when it comes down to it, not everyone actually wants the responsibility or the obligation of maintaining a website. Yeah.
Do you have any idea of what kind of man hours you are talking about to maintain a website?
It really does depend on what your organization would want to put on the site. If you're talking about putting multimedia, it's going to take a lot more. If you're talking about just a list of local businesses, that's pretty easy and fast. So a lot of it actually truly does depend on the kind of content that you would imagine putting up for your community.
Right, but the .nyc feeds, they update automatically.
They update automatically, that's right.
One thing you don't have to worry about.
Right, that's
Zero
right.
man hours?
Right.
If you use a very basic
Well, I already
level.
have 1,000 businesses on my existing website, and it's not as easy as it might sound.
Right. And that's exactly why not every organization would want to step forward. I know it's probably the biggest concern that I hear is, what if there are multiple entities that don't want to work together? And that hasn't been borne out in the application process precisely for this issue, that not everyone wants that kind of responsibility.
You had a second question?
I had another question.
Yeah.
Can the community group then collaborate with a community board?
Yeah.
That would be the best.
That might make more sense.
For the boards to have full control and then have everybody come in and do the board.
The woman's doing very patiently in the back.
Question, am I right in assuming that if you are awarded the license, you have two websites, your own individual website for your organization, and then let's say the neighborhood is Sunnyside, then you are the administrator of
www.sunnyside.nyc? That is one possibility, or it could simply be Sunnyside.nyc and you send a DNS redirect of your site to Sunnyside.nyc. I think different organizations will probably do it differently, so you could maintain two or you could maintain one.
And a quick follow-up. If a member of the public wants to check out what's going on in their neighborhood, can they go through that portal and type in their neighborhood?
They could. I mean, probably one of the beauties of this is if you Google Sunnyside, having Sunnyside.nyc increases your visibility, which is why I think a lot of organizations are interested. But yeah, they can either go to Neighborhoods.nyc and type in Sunnyside, or they can just, in their URL bar, type Sunnyside.nyc and it'll go directly to the site.
And one last thing, I promise. Would it then have the organization's name affiliated?
Yes, that's actually one of the things in the licensing agreement is that the administrator of the site has to acknowledge who is running the site. So there has to be an about page so anyone going to the site knows who the administrator is. Yeah.
The gentleman with the camera.
Jolly McPhee from the Internet Society. When .nyc was first going up, and ICANN were delegating .nyc, the same kind of issue that you're talking about came up with that. And Tom can probably go more into the details of how it works, but eventually they decided that the city had to basically endorse whoever applied for .nyc, and in the end the city decided to do it for itself and subcontract it to someone else. But I would have thought that you'd want to see that anybody who applied was endorsed by their local community board, and if they weren't, but whoever was would obviously have a lead over whoever wasn't, something like that built into the process.
So funny you should mention that. So the application does ask for 25 affidavits of support from community members. So either 25 affidavits from individuals or 10 affidavits of support from businesses to precisely to show that
specifically community board endorsement.
So it doesn't ask for specifically community board endorsement, but it does ask for community endorsement.
Okay, and then I have a technical question, which is in terms of the modules. Presumably you're continuing the relationship with Visualizer, but would it be an open system where other people could produce modules that would be like plugins that could plug into it, you know, people like Beta NYC or whoever?
Not on the template, but again, that's the beauty of licensing it. So if you were to license JacksonHeights.nyc, you could make your site open for other folks to add content.
But if you built it into the system that so someone could produce a module, so only Visualizer has an exclusive on producing modules that go across the whole neighborhood NYC.
So the modules pull from the open data portal, right? So the site is developed, I think what you're getting at is who developed the back end and how is that administered. It is a public-private partnership. We have a contract with Visalytics, and they created an API from the open data portal, which is open data that is just localized for the neighborhood, but that is the template. So for the template, there is not the capacity for folks to input in there, but once you're the administrator of Jackson Heights, you could make it a wiki page if you wanted, and then with the oversight of adhering to the terms and conditions, you could have it be community-generated content.
I'm looking at those little boxes you have on the page. Now
Yeah.
that would be, putting something into that would be, I mean, do you respond to that?
Like she said, you could create your own little boxes on your website. You could make them look like ours if you wanted to. We're not going to provide any more than is in the template. We worked on the template with the mayor's office to make sure that it worked for the entire city. So for your neighborhood, you can do what you want to do to represent your neighborhood, but for the entire city, it's the standard template.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 more questions or 1 more question?
Yeah.
It hasn't been mentioned yet, but how about the liability insurance? Will that be covered with a blanket policy from New York City? Or will we each have to, we all have our liability insurance, but we're not deep pockets like the city is. It would wipe out an administrator if we were the sole
If someone were to
recourse.
sue you mean for, so what, again, in the contract, in the agreement, you agree to not put copyrighted materials that someone might sue you for. So if the site doesn't have copyrighted materials and doesn't have illegal or defamatory material, then the site shouldn't encounter any lawsuits. And all of in the terms and conditions of the licensing agreement, administrators agree to adhere to those terms of not putting on copyright material that hasn't been cleared for license.
Okay, that's one possibility of a suit. The other possibility that has been mentioned all throughout this conversation is where somebody in the neighborhood wants to post something and you say, no, you can't post that. Well, if they have any sense, they'll sue us and say, no, you need to post what I'm, and we're not going to try to defend that. Some bigger organization has to defend that, not us.
I mean, I think those are instances in which, yeah, the city would probably look at those cases, yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. Every one of us probably gets a grant, every organization that's a 501, from the city.
Yeah.
And what the city says is if you have your own liability insurance, you get the full grant. If you don't, you can come in under the city liability insurance for 10% of that grant.
Yeah.
Now, I know money is not involved here, but that's the way the city handles it universally for all of us not-for-profits that get money from a council person or wherever. So I think that's a big consideration.
Yeah, and I can look
for
more
getting
closely.
involved in this.
Yeah, and I can look more closely at the agreement too. That in fact there might be insurance terms in there, and I can look more closely.
Thank you.
I think I think you raised a lot of questions. The mayor's office and the borough president's office, we're all here throughout this process to support you, and as more issues come up, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah.
There's a question on the application about selling third domain names. Can you say something about that and whether, what the city's position is on that?
It is a possibility. The city remains fairly agnostic on that. If community organizations want to sell third-level domains, that is possible. So for example, that would be something like joespizza.astoria.nyc. And then in the terms, it stipulates that any revenue generated from third-level domains would go towards community projects. And there is an audit clause in there as well.
Thank you, everyone, for. I think we have to
Yeah,
wrap up here. We can hang out a little longer.
Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have in terms of licensing or the site itself.